Hello and welcome to Miguel Delaney's Inside Football. These video articles that are accompaniments to my newsletter of the same name, which you can subscribe to in the link below, and my general work for The Independent, which goes behind the headlines, behind the news cycle, to, I suppose, discuss what's really happening in football. So please like, subscribe, all the rest of it. It does help and does help us to do more of this. And in this episode, I'm going to discuss what has been the story of the week, continues to be really in the way that people are seeking out the celebration videos, seeking out just kind of the commentary and all scenes from not just in Ireland, but around the world, and Irish fans celebrating, which is, of course, Troy Parrott's match winner, 96th minute match winner against Hungary, and everything that built up to it. This is, I suppose, maybe a mildly personal story for me, given, as you can tell from the accents, I am Irish, or half Irish, half Spanish, but grew up in Ireland, have covered the team. And it's because I covered the team, I suppose, as well, that I want to discuss now why this is not just one of the best weeks that any national team can have. It's also, I think, one of these kind of stories unexpected that actually offers a bit of a lesson to football in multiple ways, but what teams can do and what the game should be about. I mean, I suppose to start, there's a lovely quote from Troy Parrott. Most of you by this point will have seen his interview after the game where he started crying. And he just flat said, this is why we love football, anything can happen. And that feels all the more acute this week because, I mean, it's worth a little bit of a kind of a layout of where the Irish team were. And that's not just over the past 10 years. That's actually last week. Because in the build-up to this game, even actually a month beforehand, Ireland they played half this World Cup qualification campaign, half of it, and they had 1 point. They looked lost. They looked like it wasn't going to happen. That 1 point, and particularly a dismal defeat away to Armenia, looked the product of what had felt a broken football culture. It was no longer producing top-level players. I mean, if you consider Ireland, you have to look at players who played in the Premier League: Roy Keane, Robbie Keane, Paul McGrath, Damien Duff. I mean, they were part of a lineage stretching back to the 1930s, and Jackie Carey from Manchester United, the FA Cup winning captain, league winning captain for Manchester United. That lineage of world-class players really stretched into this millennium and the Keanes. And that has been broken. Troy Parrott had been considered the great hope, except he'd sort of, I suppose, for various reasons, lost his way. He needed to kind of, rediscover his career. But even the way so much had been pinned on a player like Parrott was a sign of how Ireland's kind of their entire football infrastructure wasn't where it should have been, and that was a real kind of it was a waste of an opportunity of the glory years from 1988 to 2002, when Ireland were regularly qualifying for tournaments, when the national football team were the biggest thing in the country. That wasn't capitalised on. There were all sorts of dysfunctional issues in Irish football, from the state of the domestic league, which is currently undergoing a resurgence, and the kind of the pathways, the infrastructure, which meant talent wasn't capitalised. It was facing competition from local Gaelic games, as well as rugby, which is kind of a higher performance, higher society. Talent was attracted to other sports, and it all kind of culminated in this situation where Irish football, certainly at national team level, was a mess. The team was moribund. It felt like it was going nowhere. That had been the case since 2016, really, and the qualification for Euro 2016 felt like a kind of a remnant of the old era, the remnant of kind of the last effects of the kind of Italia 90 era. And yeah, it led to this situation, this group, where it looked mostly a poor side with some decent players, it just didn't have a chance. They're being outplayed by Armenia. And so then there was a brief flicker when they beat Armenia at home that gave some hope, but still, Ireland was going into this international break with a home game against Portugal, one of the best sides in the world right now, and an away game against Hungary. You do have top players like Szoboszlai, and we're really in a commanding position in the group. It just didn't look possible. Now, in hindsight, which is a classic thing, there were actually flickers. Despite that defeat to Armenia, if you look at it now, that was actually a little bit of an aberration in a group that was suggesting a bit of an upward curve. There was a 2-2 comeback against Hungary at home. They took Portugal right to stoppage time in the away game in Lisbon. And I think that came from the manager, Heimir Hallgrímsson, who himself, he did feel like a bit of an attempt to sort of kind of just almost manifest the past. I mean, because like Jack Charlton, Ireland's greatest ever manager, who did, bring out the country to 3 international tournaments, Hallgrímsson was a bit of an unfancied outsider when he was appointed. He'd done a good job with Iceland. He oversaw Iceland's victory over England in Euro 2016. But it was almost trying to like manifest the same sort of thing. Oh, it happened once with an outsider, maybe now. But of course, Hallgrímsson wasn't a 1966 World Cup winner like Jack Charlton. He didn't have the same team. But yet, he does have a capacity for, building a spirit, because that's something that he really tapped into, I think, and really came out in the Portuguese game. And also, I think what he really did now, he made Ireland hard to play against again and hard to beat. And that evolved over the games like against Hungary, like against Portugal, into something that, from what I've heard, where Ireland were actually a little bit influenced by kind of the elements used by some of Diego Simeone's Atletico Madrid team. And that can be seen in how they essentially wound up 3 opposition teams so much that they all had a player sent off. The most prominent of which was, of course, Ronaldo, who was sent off for the first time in his international career in this kind of little kind of narrative strand, or big narrative strand, that lent such an extra dimension to the 2-0 win over Portugal. And I think now that will be seen as a bit of a transformative event in modern Irish football, because it is not an exaggeration to say the team had become a joke, especially when cast against rugby. There wasn't the same interest, there wasn't the same buzz. But one game changes everything, and it does show in Irish football. There's nothing like when the international team, or the national football team, when it gets going again. There's no effect like it. I think it's linked to bigger things like how the country underwent almost a kind of a transformation of mood when Ireland qualified for their first World Cup in 1990, at particularly bleak economic times. There have been academic papers investigating over whether the feel-good momentum from that, contributed to the Celtic Tiger by the mid 90s. I mean, we're really getting into kind of bigger sociological stuff here. But that is the effect of the team, and that's the effect of the World Cup as well. It does feel like it's only the World Cup that can actually engender emotions like this. You can see a lot over the last week. It's why this is such a good story. But yeah, I think it was a transformative moment in the team, right down to the next game, where I think, because the Hungary game itself, it looked like it was going to be same old story. They went behind early on. It became a bit of a chaotic game. Even in the second half, after Hungary went 2-1 up, so Hungary went up twice, there was this sense that they just had more quality and were killing the game for Ireland. But again, they tapped into something greater. Also, I would say, Parrott has started to tap into his own ability. The equaliser, which sort of came out of nothing in the 80th minute. That is, speaking to people who've worked in Irish football for years, and especially those who knew our glory years, which were associated with a certain type of football, that was the sort of goal that Ireland didn't used to score. It was real street football stuff, of the type that Dublin football has always produced, that sort of kind of mercurial player that someone like John Giles and much later Wes Hoolahan would have been the epitome of. And that's what Troy Parrott tapped into. He produced a brilliant goal to equalise, and then everything was changed. And then you are getting into will, you are getting into spirit. I think that's what has so touched people, because it was that just desire to make something special happen. And the goal itself, testament to, or credit, to Caoimhín Kelleher, who's marking himself out as one of the best goalkeepers in Europe, I would say right now. He feels unflappable. And also, he was very proactive for that goal. It wasn't just him hitting and hoping. He was aiming for Scales, who got a brilliant header in the bottom. And actually, he got Cristiano Ronaldo hang time on it to set up that moment. And then, yes, it's instinct. Yes, it's luck. But it's an element of creating your own luck, because if you watch that goal again now, Troy Parrott makes this, as Kelleher is lining up to send that ball forward. Parrott's about to make a run. That also comes, I think, from the same sort of thing where, yes, Hungary probably have a better team, but they were panicking anytime the ball went near their box. And again, Ireland felt that momentum. They got with it. It's something that the team hadn't done over the past 10 years. And then, of course, Parrott, he steals in there and almost kind of lending to the theatre of the goal. He's running full pelt. And just the last second, just when the Hungarian goalkeeper is about to claim it, he gets that touch. And even the way it's with his studs, the last possible thing he can do to just divert it past. Remarkable. And then, of course, that run, it just keeps continuing into utter release, utter euphoria, and why we watch football. Why, as Parrott himself said, why we enjoy the game. And I do think there's something bigger there, because, Kevin Doyle, the former Reading and Wolves striker, who obviously had multiple international caps for Ireland, he made a really interesting point on Irish TV where he was talking about, and it's something this video, my coverage for The Independent, has discussed a lot, but he was talking about how there's such a fascination with figures like Ronaldo, like Messi, and that leads into kind of the obsession with the big clubs, the super clubs. He was talking about how his own kids they're just obsessed with Ronaldo, and then they see Ronaldo getting sent off, Ireland win again, and it shows them there's something more to football. And I think that is the preciousness of a week like this, and it touches on something as to why the Super League failed, why the Champions League as it is now currently isn't working, and a lot of executives in football complain about it, because it's an attempt to make the big teams play against each other all the time in a way that can't possibly recreate what games between the big teams actually mean something. I mean, look, Real Madrid, Liverpool in the Champions League group stages, it's not the same as Barcelona, Inter Milan in the semi-finals last season, because the stakes aren't the same. That is why people really watch football. That's what really touches people. And of course, we're in a modern football economy where there's much more focus on the big teams. It means that actually an international break like this doesn't have the same build-up. A lot of fans aren't necessarily aware that Ireland are in a situation like that. And I think it's a little bit of a lesson for the game over what actually matters. And that this is why there's been such a kind of reaction to it, why it has been one of the biggest stories in football now for a few days. And it's something truly special for multiple reasons. In Ireland, for just the transformation of the team, the rebirth of the side, I would say. That's when, even if Ireland don't qualify in March, and that's another point I would make actually, I think it's an almost unfair wait for all the teams to be involved in the playoffs, to have to wait until March after the actual World Cup draw is made to suddenly find out if they're there. Everything can change in the meantime. But in terms of the new spirit around this team, it doesn't feel like it's going to change for Ireland. That's hugely significant. It produced joy that people will now, in Ireland, will remember forever. And evidently touched a lot of people around the world. And that's what football is ultimately all about. And I think a lot of football stakeholders could do well to remember it. We're in a world now where they want to change qualification, where again there's more of an attempt to make the big teams play more, to erode a lot of what international football is about. And this was the timeliest reminder possible, in the timeliest way possible. A 96-minute winner. There's really nothing like it, especially if it means getting into a World Cup playoff. So please like, subscribe, and thank you. See you next time.